Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR Podcast. It's 2025. NASCAR is back. Get your hands on the Fantasy NASCAR Spreadsheet. $20 for the month of February. $200 for the rest of the season. Just pay one time. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. And you won't have to worry. Did I get his son a Happy Meal this month? $20, $200. Bunch of tools I'm working on, adding new stuff every day. It's amazing working with AI to build better fantasy NASCAR lineups. Today, let's ask the question, does Daytona affect subsequent races? Well, what's the deal with that? The theory is if you wreck in Daytona, then you've got to prep a super speedway car for the next race. You're spending a lot of time and resources that could be allocated otherwise. You're fixing your car to get ready for Atlanta when you could be prepping for Phoenix, Las Vegas, the car races down the road. And so we haven't really had a large sample size of the back-to-back super speedways. We can look at last season. Again, that's a small data set. But it is an interesting theory, and it could help us predict in a couple ways. One, if they wreck at Daytona, then they fall behind the eight ball while other teams are able to focus their resources on the intermediate short tracks coming up. And so maybe we lean more towards the guys that don't wreck at Daytona. Also, we could maybe take the assumption that some of these teams may race a little bit more conservatively at Daytona, realizing there could be ramifications for a wreck. TLDR, like and subscribe, share, $20, February, $200 for the rest of the season. You're going to want these tools and all this AI analysis. You're going to want to be here. Come one of us. TLDR, there's no effect. A wreck at Daytona does not impact Atlanta, and it doesn't seem to, from the small data set, affect the subsequent races at the intermediate tracks and the short tracks. We'll go over the data in a second. Also, I went over it, and then I had the AI also review the data and analyze various sources, and it seems to agree that there is not an impact to this. This theory doesn't seem to matter. And even if it did suggest that, well, some people might be more conservative at Daytona because of the consequences, being conservative at Daytona doesn't really matter. Racing safely doesn't really matter because often your wreck is not your wreck. It's someone else's wreck that collects you. So even if we could find some validity to a Daytona wreck impacting races down the schedule, does it really matter for Daytona? Maybe it could matter for races down the schedule, but it doesn't. Look at the data, and you're going to see probably not. And the AI seemed to agree. And it even controlled. I'm not going to show you all the different things that it did. I just ran the hypothesis by it, and it came up with a bunch of different ways to analyze it. But it controlled for small teams and big teams, and pretty impressive. And it seems to believe that, no, these teams are already have plenty of resources, and it makes sense. They've had all the off season, not just to prepare a couple super speedway cars for the beginning of the season. I mean, they know they could wreck out at Daytona, so they're probably entering the season with two super speedway cars. But they've also probably got their intermediate vehicles and short track vehicles pretty much set up to the way that they want them. They weren't really waiting or procrastinating until week 2 of the season. All right, let's get on that Las Vegas stock car. No, you probably should have been working on that in December. So we'll look at the data, and you can see on the screen I've got it sorted by average finish at Daytona and Atlanta. So in theory, you'd think, all right, well, if you have a good average finish at Daytona and Atlanta, you avoided DNFs, your car was in good shape, your team was then able to focus a lot of resources on the upcoming races, and you can see like, it didn't really help Bubba that much. Now, again, there's tons of different variables. There's teams, there's drivers, there's tracks. So just because you didn't wreck doesn't mean you're going to be good at any given track on any given weekend. But we would probably like to see some sort of pattern. But again, you're seeing Kyle Busch avoids trouble at Daytona and Atlanta. So, he must have had plenty of resources to pour into Las Vegas and Phoenix. Well, it doesn't really seem to bear out. Corey LaJoie, well, that's a small team. That doesn't count. I agree with you there. William Byron, doesn't seem to help him too much at the beginning of the season. What we really want to look at is probably some of the more telling guys who got into trouble at Daytona, and we want to see, well, they got into trouble at Daytona. They're behind the eight ball. I think the glaring example of this is not a thing is you look at Brad Keselowski, 33rd at Daytona, 33rd at Atlanta. Didn't stop him from finishing 13th at Las Vegas, 4th at Phoenix, although they probably weren't a top 5 car, but they had borderline a top 10 car in that race. Sure, they played games like Brad Keselowski always does on pit road and made some gains there. But regardless, they had about top 10 car in that RFK. Anyway, the point is, though, issues didn't seem to hold him back. Even Todd Gilliland, issues doesn't seem to, obviously these aren't the greatest performances by Front Row Motorsports, but they're in line with what Todd Gilliland usually does. And the point is that his team had issues at Daytona, Atlanta, but then it stopped them from doing their normal duties. Joey Logano, issues at Daytona and Atlanta, doesn't seem or appear to hold him back. Carson Hocevar, issues, and then pulls off 2 top 15s. Reddick, issues, 29th and 30th at Atlanta, doesn't seem to hold him back at all. So the idea that a wreck at Daytona influences or affects races down the road, not really a thing. Hate it. Well, not hate it, but, I guess people want podcasts where you discover something and come up with a new idea. Well, this is a null hypothesis. It's good. What did we discover? We discovered that it doesn't matter if you wreck at Daytona, for the most part. Again, it's not large data sets because we haven't had back-to-back speedways in a while, so forever, really, until recently. So small sample size, but the idea that Daytona has an impact, not really a thing. Thanks for joining me. Please go to racefortheprize.com. $20 for February. Monday night, karate night. Wednesday night, karate night. Like to take the kid to the McDonald's, get him a Happy Meal. Sometimes I can afford a Coke for myself. If you give me $20 this month, maybe I can get a Coke, maybe not. But maybe we'll be able to go to McDonald's Monday and Wednesday if you pitch in. It's just $20. You can do it. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. You're going to want these tools. You're going to see what I do with AI. You're going to want the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet as it gets better and better and better and able to scrape all kinds of different resources and then aggregate and analyze the data. We're going full go, full send, taking it to the next level. Not the same old traditional sheets that you see, same old traditional shows that you see, trying to break through to the other side, but also have fun. Be positive. That's what we're doing here at racefortheprize.com. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, $20, $200. Like, subscribe, share. Trip the lights. Fantastic.